Okay, Chodesh Tov, we're on the New Testament base in the bottom line, and the subject was talking about the Mishnah. The Mishnah mentioned about when the blood went out of the Beis Hamikdash to Nachal Kidron. So it says that the fertilizer that was there could be bought from Hektish, and people did not pay for it. So then there would be Meila. The Gemara said yesterday that it's not going to be Meila D'Oraisa, it'll be Meila D'Rabbanan. Machlok is about that also. That's how we learned the Gemara. Maybe there's a question how we learned one way, but there are other ways to learn also, because I made the pshat that I said yesterday is a little sticky. That I said Menani Mili is like starting a new subject, because till now we were talking about seemingly about the blood after the kapara, like it says it came to Nachal Kidron, and then we start talking Menani Mili. This whole sugya started about the blood before kapara. So that's not so neat, but the facts are true. But the way to learn the Gemara is not so simple. But let's take it back to the sugya over here. We're talking about the bukachim, the blood of the animals of the kapara. And Gemara says that after the kapara, after you sprinkle the blood on the mizbeach, whatever you're supposed to do, so then surely there's no me'ilah. Like the Gemara ended off on the bottom line, there's no thing which was already used. The mitzvah was done, and there's still me'ilah. Once the mitzvah was done, there's no more me'ilah. And the Gemara's drushes were all about before kapara. If someone would have used the blood of a korban animal before the blood was sprinkled on the mizbeach, wherever it's supposed to be sprinkled, so there's also no milah. And it brought three psukim, either lachem, just get over here, either was a pasuk that said lachem, there was one drasha, there was a pasuk that said lachaper, and there also was a pasuk that said who. And the three different Amoraim said the three different drashas. The one's going to speak soon about you don't need all three of them, and nobody said all three. Each person, Ula said one, Reb Shimon, Tanat Reb Shimon said a second one, Reb Yochanan said a third one. The Gemara is going to say, what does each one do with the other two psukim? But there were three psukim, all the same. All of them said the same halacha, that there's no me'ilah on the blood, even before kapara. The first one was lachem, that it belongs to you, means that there's no me'ilah on it. Second was lachaper, it's only for kapara, not for anything else, no me'ilah. And the third one was who, that it stays status quo, as the Gemara explains, that just like after you did the kapara, there's surely no me'ilah, like it says in the bottom line, so too, status quo means that it was always like that, and there was no me'ilah even before. The Gemara now goes on a tangent a little bit about this last halacha. There's nothing that once it was finished being used, that there's still me'ilah. Once the mitzvah was done, there's no more me'ilah. The Gemara says, kasha below, is that not so? Is there nothing else like that? Chumas hadeshen. That Chumas hadeshen means you're supposed to take some of the ashes of the mizbeach and put it next to the mizbeach. That was the mitzvah. You did it already, and there still is. It remains that you're supposed to leave it over there, like Rashi says. Rashi says the Ton Geniza, that Rashi over there, that you're not allowed to do anything with it. Even after, we said over there, maybe it gets swallowed up, but regardless if it gets swallowed up or not, you're not allowed to use those ashes. So you see it's asabana, Rashi says if it's asabana, it's also, there still continues being me'ilah because it's holy. So there is something which the mitzvah is finished and still there is me'ilah. The Gemara answers, Mishum Daha, top line, Mishum Davi Chumas Hadeshen, Rubik Dekuna, Shnei Ksufam Ban Kechad, V'chol Shnei Ksufam Ban Kechad, Ein Melamdim. The kash would only be a kash if there's only one thing. If the Torah shows one place where there's me'ilah, even after the mitzvah was done, so then you learn out from there to every place else. But if there are two places, so then that shows that only these two are the exception and everything else is not. I have a mashal that I remember from 6th grade, my Rebbe or my Geldworth used the mashal, so I like to say the mashal, that if the Rebbe points to one point, there's no recess. So it could be understood that the whole class no recess, because he said to one boy, no recess, could be everybody. But if he says to two boys, no recess, that means only them and everybody else does. Because he wouldn't have to say it a second time if he meant everybody. So the fact that it says, that's as far as to say that if it says two exceptions, that means that's the exception, it's not the rule anymore. If there's only one, it says one time, it could be that's the rule. But if it says two, then that's the exception and it's not the rule. So the Gemara says there are two places where you see that even after the mitzvah was done, there still is me'ilah. And those are exceptions, and everything else still stays the rule. Everything else is not like that. What are the two exceptions? One is Chumas Hadeshen, as we just said, that even though the mitzvah was done, there still is me'ilah. And Big Day Kuna. What's Big Day Kuna? That's talking about the begadim of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. And once he uses it, he's not using it anymore. And still it says that it needs Geniza. Big Day Kuna after Yom Kippur, even though it's not Sis Mitzvah, no, it's not aware anymore. And it needs Geniza. It means it's Aser Bana. So that's two exceptions, two cases where you see that the Torah says that even though the mitzvah is done, still it's usher to benefit from it. So you don't learn to any place else. So as the rule stays that ain't l'chadav shnasim mitzvah. So therefore the blood over here, once the blood was used for the mitzvah, so there surely is no me'ilah. The Gemara says on the third line, that's not so simple about the big dekuna. We have this issue. That's good according to Rabbanan, who say that's the halacha, that when it says in the pasuk v'nicham sham, he says if he should take off the big dekuna, the kohen gadol, and v'nicham sham, he leaves it over there, and that means it's supposed to be not used anymore, and you do save it. Geniza means that you take care of it. You're not allowed to use it, and you're not allowed to use it for your own benefit anymore either. So then you have a good proof. There's another exception of something which the mitzvah could finish, it's discontinued, and still it has milah. Rabbi Dosa says no, that you are allowed to use it. The Kohen Gadol cannot use it again for Yom Kippur. It can't be like used clothing. It can't be the second time. It has to be new each Yom Kippur. But somebody else could use it. It's 4 big dekuna that the Kohen Hedyot is allowed to use. So according to him, it's not nasis mitzvah. There are 2 ways to learn the Gemara over here. Rashi says that there is no me'ilah. But just the simple way of learning the Gemara would be that according to Rabbi Dosa, it's not considered discontinued. It's not nasis mitzvah because you're still allowed to use it. According to Rabbanan, you're not allowed to use it anymore. Then we can talk about that it's not used anymore, and still there is me'ilah. But according to Rabbi Dosa, it's still usable. It's not nasis mitzvah, so continue using it. So then there wouldn't be you don't see any pasuk where even though the mitzvah was done, you're not allowed to use it. So that's the most kasha. What are you going to say? According to Rabbi Dosa, there's only one pasuk, only Trumas Hadeshen, and one pasuk we'd be able to learn to other place the whole Torah that even though it's nasis mitzvah, so still there is me'ilah.
Excuse me. In terms of Rabbi Dosa, how can it be used again?
By
just not that day, or
no Kohen Hedyot. The Kohen Gadol is not allowed to use it for Yom Kippur, next Yom Kippur. But the Kohen Hedyot only has 4 begadim anyway. He's allowed to use those 4 begadim, the 4 white begadim. Okay. The Gemara over there talks about. We had the Gemara earlier that this would depend on if the belt of the Kohen Hedyot is made out of linen or it's made out of wool. Also, Dosa seem to have held that it's made out of linen. That's why he says that these begadim are still usable for the Kohen Hedyot. Over there, one of the Gemaras just challenged him. Over there, Rebbe challenged him and said, "Sheish tubas b'davar." One of them was that the belt is not the same belt. Also, the Gemara spoke about Mal Kodesh Ben Morid, and these were kashas that the Gemara challenged Rabbi Dosa, but we're not going into the whole subject. Just this one point that he says that it's not discontinued; it's still allowed to be used. So you don't find 2 exceptions; only you find 1 exception. The Gemara answers there's a different exception. Egla Roof is also such an example that even though the mitzvah is done, like it says, the case over there is that somebody was murdered. We don't know who the murderer is, so the tzibur has to bring a kapara until they find the murderer, and that's called Egla Roof. Over there it says that for Fusham, they're supposed to chop off the head of that calf, and over there it says also Orfu Sham. Rashi says that the drasha of Sham says that also Tegin Izasha. Sham Tegin Izasha. That Rashi seems to be Rashi's drasha, but there's another pasuk over there that even though you did it, the mitzvah is over. Still, you're not allowed to benefit from it.
What I just lost the first line. We're trying to learn the Davash and As mitzvah if you could use it again?
No, if there's Me'ilah, is it still Asher Bana or Me'ilah after it was finished being used already? So if we said a klal at the end of Anun Testament base, we said a klal, there's no such thing. Once you did the mitzvah, then there's no Me'ilah anymore. There's no Isra no. And the Gemara is finding exceptions that it's good to find an exception. Trumas Hadeshen is one. If you only have one exception, then it won't be the exception. It'll be the rule. Learn it from there to everything else. So the Gemara is finding there are more exceptions, 2 exceptions, 3 exceptions. If you find 2 exceptions, the Gemara says then we're not going to learn out from there to every place else, and the rule is going to be chai v'kaim. The rule will be that once it's nasis mitzvah, so there's no milah. Only Trumas Hadeshen, and something else is going to be an exception. If you only find one, so then maybe you can learn out from there to every place else. So we're happy to find, the more we find, the better, the happier we are that that's the exceptions. And the rule will still say that once the nasis mitzvah, so there's no milah. Like dam will be an example that once the dam was used, it happens to be dam was no milah even before because of these special psukim. But that would be an example of something which the dam was used and there is no more milah anymore. We could talk about the Nesachim also. Let's say you poured the libations of the wine and then someone's going to take it from the under the mizbeach. Is there milah over there? So the Gemara talks about these issues. But anyway, if we're finding out, are there more cases where it says that it was nasis mitzvah, so the mitzvah was done, and it's still us to use. So we found already Trumas Hadeshen, that's for sure. We tekunas and machlokes, and Egla Rufa is also in a case where it's nasis mitzvah, so the mitzvah was done, and still you're not allowed to use it. And once you have 2 psukim, even if you hold like Rabbi Dosa that tekuna is not an exception, but you have Trumas Hadeshen. Let's say Trumas Hadeshen over here, and the question tekuna was a question, and Egla Rufa. Here's the second one. The Gemara uses it right here also, Trumas Hadeshen. So we have 2, and therefore But the Gemara says not so simple. The first one on the line is Ein, about 10 lines down. It's not so simple. Some say that even if there are two exceptions, it still might be the rule. And my example from my Rebbe in 6th grade is not such a good example then. But if he tells 3 kids, maybe 2 kids, still he's just chazering over that you don't have recess, you don't have recess, nobody has recess. But if he says 3 kids don't have, you and you, then surely they're the exception, everybody else does. So there's machlok. Some hold that shnei ksuv bam kachad is yes malam. You still could learn, it's still considered the rule.
Ketuvim could be, in this case, are 2 different mitzvahs.
With Dafka 2 different mitzvahs that we're talking about.
What?
We're talking about different mitzvahs, and it says
Used?
it means psukim, 2 psukim that are saying the same thing. You don't, that becomes the exception and it doesn't become the rule. So, but the Gemara says the machlok.
Egel Rufa is not Mila though.
Right, very nice. So Dr. Fine is pointing out that it's not a question of Meila because Trumas Hadeshen and Big Dekun is Kodesh, but Egel Ruf is not holy. So Taisus Shana points it out. He points it out a page later that he says, you're right, it just means Isra. It doesn't have to mean Dafka Meila, Es Isra. Rashi in the beginning.
The leftover, whatever has left over from that Egla Ruf.
You're not supposed to use.
You can't use.
But it's not Meila, it's not a code, it's not holy.
No.
So that's true. It's Isra and it's not Meila. Nice point. So the Gemara is still asking, but there's Madama that says, there's a Madama that says that even if you have 2 psukim, that's still not considered the exception, that's still considered the rule. So if you hold, like Rabbi Dosa, that Big Tikkun is not on the list, you only have Trumas Hadeshen and Egla Rufa, it's not enough. You still could say that that's the rule and learn out other things, that they still are Asur Bana. So how do we know this big rule that Ein L'chadav Shnasis is supposed to be Melamdin? The Gemara answers, Tremi Utek Sivi. The Samo and Harufa. That besides just there's a myth. We're just talking about that it was exception. The fact that the Torah says that it's asabana 1 time, 2 times, maybe that's the exception, and you can learn out everything else is the rule. But now Gemara says different Rash. The vav, the last vav is Samo. He should place it, that vav, and also Harufa, the Harufa, the one. So that hay of the Harufa, there are 2 miyutim over here, and that's coming to say that only these are nothing else. First talks about how come you have to have 2 miyutim, one of them the Chor should have been enough. But that's the end of the Gemara. That the cloud stays true. There are exceptions, Trumas Hadeshen and Egla Rufa, maybe Big Dekuna also, and that's how we pass. There are 3 exceptions, and Taisus points out that if you have 3 exceptions, surely that's the exception and the rule stays true. The Gemara is going, even according to Rabbi Dosa, there's also to be the mir to say that nothing else is in this category. These are exceptions, and these things there's Isra or Me'ila even after the mitzvah was done, but as a rule, anything the mitzvah was done, there's no Me'ila. That's the end of that sugya.
Excuse me, what? Well, I'm sorry, what is Visamo? What does that do?
Visamo Eitzel HaMizbeach. That's the pasuk that it says by Trumas Hadeshen. Rashi brought it down maybe before. Visamo Eitzel HaMizbeach. That it says by Trumas Hadeshen that you should put it next to the Mizbeach, and that pasuk we learn out that it needs Geniza, and you're not allowed to use it even though the mitzvah was done. But that extra vav, the last vav, the last vav of the word Visamo, the vav after the mem, not the first vav, the last vav, that shows dafka. This has this quality that even though the mitzvah was done, you're still not allowed to use it, but don't apply that to anything else. So that's the end of the sugya. Now the Gemara goes back to what we mentioned before on Amud Beis. It says there are 3 psukim over there to say that there's no meal on the blood, even before the kapara. This was a side subject about the halacha mitzvah, so after the mitzvah was done. But the truth is that the blood there's no meal even before. You shechted the animal, the korban, and someone takes the blood and uses it, there's no meal. Even before the sprinkling of the blood. And the Gemara brought a choice of 3 psukim, but he showed you don't need all of them. Rabbi Ula said lachem, Rabbi Shimon said lachaper, Rabbi Yochanan said who, but you don't need all 3 of them. So each person can have to answer what does he do with the other two psukim. That's the Gemara's kasha now. So it's a new sugya. Mamash new sugya now. The Gemara starts. Bahani tlasi kroi b'dam lamali. What do you need 3 psukim for? 1 is enough to tell you that there's no mila by dam. And the Gemara answers, it's true. We do need another 2 psukim. Besides Mila, which is the middle one over here, which everybody agrees to, that one person is to tell you that there's no Mila on the blood, there's also no Noser on the blood, and there's no Tum on the blood. What does that mean? That if somebody had a korban which was Noser left overnight, and it becomes Aser, and it's Aser to eat, and if somebody eats Noser, it's Chayiv Koris, that's only the meat, maybe other parts of the animal, but the blood, if someone ate the blood, of course there's Isser to eat blood. But besides this of eating blood, there's another Isser, eating Noser. He Chayiv Koris on 2 counts, two korban chatas. So the point is that there's no Isser Noser on the blood. So just like we have one person to say there's no Me'ila on blood, there's also no Noser on blood. Also Tumah. If the animal became Tameh, so the meat, if someone eats kachim that's Tameh, or if he's tummy, the person is tummy, so then he's chayiv korban for eating the tumah, and not if the meat is tummy, if he's tummy. And here, if he's going to eat the blood of the korban when he's tummy, it doesn't make him chayiv korban. There's no korban chatas for eating the blood. So that's with extra 2 psukim. You have 3 psukim altogether. You don't need all 3. You only need 1 for milah. You need another 2. What are the other 2? One to tell you that there's no chiv kares on eating the blood of nosar, and there's no chiv kares on eating the blood of tumah or bit tumah. Am I right? That tumah means the person is tumah. Does Rashi say anything over there? Tumah seguf, yes. If he was tumah, if the basar was tumah, there's not a chiv kares. But if the person was tumah, there's a chiv kares. So if he ate blood of a korban when he was tumah, so there's no chiv kares. But the more that stands off, that everyone's wondering, is there usually a third thing besides nosar and tumah? There's also pigul. It goes together. Nosar, pigul, and tumah. Usually it's like a combination. And pigul means if somebody bought a korban with the intention when he did the shechita and different avodas, he had in mind that he's going to do the zrika or chuslas mano, whatever the conditions of pigul are, and that's also chiv kares if he eats it. So what's the din of the dam of a korban which is pigul? What if somebody ate the blood of a korban which is pigul? Is he chayiv kares? You don't have 4 drushes, you only have 3 psukim, 1 for meila, 1 for nosa, 1 for tumah. How about if somebody ate the blood of pigul? So that the Gemara says there's surely no pigul. Without a pasuk, there's another rule that would exclude blood from being in the category of pigul. What is that? You don't need a pasuk to exclude that there's no pigul on blood, because there surely is not. One of the conditions in order to be chayiv for pigul is it's a kind of part of the korban which has a matir. The word matir means something which is necessary to do in order to permit it. And Rashi says the example would be that, let's say, to eat the meat of a korban is only after the zrika was done, or to bring the meat of the korban onto the mizbeach is only after the zrika was done. So the meat is chayiv for pigul because it has a matir. It has something which is necessary in order to be matir. But blood doesn't have anything to be matir. On the contrary, blood is the matir. When you do the zrika of the blood, then it's matir something else, the meat to eat, or to go on the mizbech, but the blood itself, the dam atzmo matir, the blood is the matir, not that it has a matir. So according to the regular rules of pigul, surely blood is not in that category. So someone's not chayiv if he eats blood of pigul. That does not need a pasuk. But there are 3 psukim to say that there's no meila on blood, and there's no nosar on blood, and there's no tamei on blood. All of this came on as a side issue that our Mishnah mentioned about the blood of the korban of Yom Kippur, or other korbanos that went on the Yesod, then it went into the Nachal Kidron, and even after the mitzvah was done, it's also with Rabbanan to benefit from it. Somebody, and they would pay the gizbor, they would pay the treasurer of Hektish, and they'd be able to take that for fertilizer.
What happens? Oh, that's it. One is
For nosa, what?
Making the fertilizer. There is.
That's what he said. It's only
Oh,
Rabbanan.
the Rabbanan, but it's not.
There's no meila. There's no meila after the vote was done, and no one even before. That's our whole
When we say
sugya.
meila, we saying the Rabban, the
That's
rice.
what.
We're saying it's.
Our sugya is talking about the raisa, and with Rabbanan there is meila, and
Oh,
our
there's
Mishnah
meila,
there's
the
meila
Rabbanan,
even after the kapara was done. Yes, please.
For nosa, would it be a palm in Isa Isa? The nosa, it would be, nosa would be, the blood would be forbidden anyway, because in Isa Isa.
How is it possible to have those both isurim?
Yeah.
I don't recall, but I think the Gemara talks about it. How is it possible that one isur it takes on the other isur? How is it possible to have 2 isurim? And I think the Gemara talks about it, why one is considered more. Yeah, but it's a mosif, it's a kol, all these things. So I forgot the details, but I think it's spoken about.
Because
Okay.
sometimes when you have shogeg, then you have shogegos, so you have to know what.
Yes,
if
but
you did 2, then.
Yeah, but that
then-
doesn't answer the question. That the Ein Isachal would mean that you don't have 2 isurim. If the one is the first, then the second doesn't take effect. But I think the Gemara talks about that. Okay, so we finished the whole Seder Avoda, more or less, yes?
Yes, but if you have Christmas nach Shabbat, make Zrika, Chuslas Manan.
Yeah, so then the korban becomes pigul. And if he eats the korban, even if he did everything right, the korban is pigul, then it's chayiv kares if he eats it. Gemara is saying that there's no chayiv kares eating the blood of a korban which is pigul, because it doesn't have a matir. According to the rules of what's included in pigul, that doesn't fit into the rules. Okay, new subject. So we're zooming out just to chazer over everything. We did everything the big day 11. The Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, he did the big day 11. He sort of finished it. He didn't finish yet. He still has to do send away the Sarah Mishloach, which he didn't do yet, which is going to be soon. That's going to be not soon. It's going to take a couple of pages till we get back into the the continuation of the avoda. But right now the Mishnah is zooming out. After he said everything, he did the vidui on the par, and then he did the Agral on the Seirim, and then he did the second vidui, he shechted the par. He brought the Ketores, and he brought the blood of the par into the Kodesh HaKadoshim 1 and 7, and then he brought the shechit, he shechted the goat. He brought that in to the Kodesh HaKadoshim 1 and 7. Then he did on the Paroches 1 and 7 of each one. Then he mixed the bloods and put it on the Mizbeach. The four corners, and then on top of the Mizbeach 7 times. He came out, he did the Shirayim, that's on the Mizbeach, and we finished all that. And now the Mishnah zooms out and says, what if he did something out of order? There's still more to do. He didn't finish doing everything. He's still supposed to do video on the Sarah Mishtaleach and send it away. But the Mishnah is zooming out like Hafsaka and talk about what if he did things out of order. So the Mishnah starts, anything that he did out of order is ma'akev. It sounds like a very general statement, but we're going to see soon that it's not so general. The words say if he did something out of order, it's ma'akev. If you have number one, then number two, and he did number two first, so number two was disqualified because it went out of line. It jumped out of line, so he's disqualified. The one that was done, number one, which was done out of order, he's okay. Two went in front of one, so the one is still good, but the two wasn't good. So you have to do the two again. And as if the Mishnah explains, Hiktan Dam Asar L'Dam Apar. Let's say in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, what goes first the blood of the bull and then the blood of the goat. Let's say he did the blood of the goat first, so he wasn't Yotze. Then he did the blood of the bull, so now he has to do the blood of the goat again. That's what the Mishnah says. Hiktim Dam Asar L'Dam Apar. If he preceded the blood of the goat before the blood of the bull, which is out of order, he has to once again do the blood of the goat because it was out of order. So he did two and then one. He's supposed to go back and then two again. He did base then Aleph. He's supposed to do base again. The Aleph was okay. The power wasn't affected, even though someone jumped ahead of it. He wasn't Nifgam. But the one that went first out of order, he was bad, disqualified. Then you have to do it again. A good gersa would be to take out the vav right now on the word ve'im. They say that we'll see in the Mishnah that it doesn't read so well. So you can take out the vav. It reads much nicer. A new Mishnah. What happened if the blood spilled out in the middle? The Kohen Gadol, the scenario was like I don't know how it happened over there, but he was in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. He's in the middle of doing achas v'shtayim, and then the blood spilled. The whole he dropped the kli. I don't know what happened over there in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, full of all the blood. He goes, I don't know what happens. But the question is, what does he continue? Who's going to clean it? So that Mishnah doesn't talk about all that. But he comes out, he says he dropped the blood. So you have to continue. So however they're going to do it, to shecht another bar, we'll see the details, I think, tomorrow. But the Mishnah wants to know, when he continues, where does he continue from? He did it already, let's say, achas v'shalosh. He's middle of the count. So what does he do? So im ad shelo gomer samatana shebifnim nishpach adam. He didn't yet finish everything he's supposed to do in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and the blood spilled out. Yavi damacha v'yachzav etchila mibifnim. Bring other blood. He has to shecht again apart, and he should start again from the beginning. He starts again from the beginning. So even though he did already a few matanos, he starts again. You can't continue from the middle.
Wouldn't we know that from the beginning where it said lo asa klum, the general rule at the beginning of the Mishnah?
No. They spoke about did something out of order. He didn't do anything out of order. It's a new Mishnah now. It's make a big stop in between because doing out of order.
I see. It's not out of order.
It's not out of order.
Well,
it's a new Mishnah.
Well, he did 1, 2, 3, and then he's going to start and do 1, 2, 3 again.
No, that's not called out of order. That means that it wasn't good the first time. It's not because it's out of order. The Chiddush would be like the Mishnah is going to continue. Somebody's going to hold. There's not a continue where he left off. He doesn't even have to go back. But the Tanakham holds he has to go back to the beginning. But the Mishnah continues. There are three series: the series of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and then the series of the Heichal on the Paroches, and then the series of the Mizbeach Hazov. So each one is a series on its own. Shekul and Kapara b'fnei Asman. If he, let's say, he spilled out after the Kodesh HaKadoshim went well, both with the bull and the goat, and then he was in the Heichal and sprinkling towards the Paroches, and then it spilled out in the middle. Does he have to start from the beginning the Kodesh HaKadoshim again? Then it says no. That each one is a series on its own. So he starts from the beginning of that series.
Really, he's got to do two. He's got to do a par and a seir because it's got to do the mixture.
It's not a mixture. At this point, it's a mixture. Each one's separate. Only in the Mizbeach is a mixture. In the Kodesh HaKadoshim is separate, and by the Heichal is separate, and by the Mizbeach is a mixture. So he's still doing it separate. But it is true that the par has to go before the soil. That is true. But if whatever is spilled, so he gets another one of that, and he starts from the beginning of that series of the power, so whatever it might be. And you don't have to go back to the beginning. It means if he messed it up in the middle of the Heichal, he doesn't have to go back to the Kodesh Kodesh. Kodesh Kodesh was good. That series was good. He goes back to the beginning of that series. That's the first opinion. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Omer, he's even more lenient. He doesn't have to go back to the beginning of the series either. He just continues where he left off. So if he was doing Achas v'Shalosh and then it spilled, he gets another one and he continues Achas v'Arba. Nobody else has to go back to the series before. That's nobody. He just starts that series. But even that is also not simple. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon even more lenient and say he doesn't even have to go back at all. He just continues where he left off. So it's too much nice, as Nebi Yaakov pointed out. The first part of the Mishnah is talking about out of order. The second part is not do it out of order. The second part is do you have to, it's really could be a new Mishnah. It's not even so nice that the printer put it together. Two sugyas. One is about doing things out of order. The other one was if he spilled the blood, does he have to go to the beginning of the series or he just continues where he left off? So I don't see the connection between the beginning and the half. It seems to be too much nice in the Gamri, and also the Vav is really out of place. They take out the Vav. It's not V'im. It's Im Achalo Gama.
Oh, so from Emma onwards is a different subject, a new subject.
Right. Tanu Rabbanan. Now we're going into the issue of the beginning of the Mishnah. The first point about the order has to be in order. The Mishnah was very general. It said anything that out of order is not kosher. But now the Gemara says not so simple. It's not so broad rule. Tanu Rabbanan. So far it's word for word of the Mishnah. Anything which is supposed to be in order, if he did it out of order, he preceded something where it's not supposed to belong, doesn't count. Rabbi Yehuda, holds it's only things done in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Only things done in the Kodesh. Lefnim means inside, but it means, as Rashi says, Lefnim, all the way inside. The things that are done in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which means the bull, and then the goat, that's what's marked. The order of the things done in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Of course, it's Big Day Lavan. There is no thing in the Kodesh HaKadoshim which is done with the golden clothing. Only with the Big Day Lavan. But the fact that it's Big Day Lavan is not enough to be marked. Only if it's done in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, when the Mishnah says anything out of order is not Yotzei, that only means in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Rabbi Nechemia Omer, Rabbi Nechemia is more machmir, but Medvar Mamurim, Bedvar Manasim, Big Day Lavan. He holds that the criterion is the Big Day Lavan. Whatever's done in the white clothing is ma'akev. Even if it's done outside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, even if it's done in the Heichal or it's done in the Azara. So to make it simple, Rabbi Yehuda holds that the criteria is Kodesh HaKadoshim. That's what they say is ma'akev. But Rabbi Nechemia holds anything done in the white clothing is ma'akev, even if it's done outside.
That's the end of the Brisa. Rabbi Yochanan is not in the Brisa. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, at the end of the Brisa, good. And now Rabbi Yochanan starts explaining. It says on the side, we had this before the Flamet test. If anybody wants to see it over there, we had mentioned this machlokes on 39b. The Gemara continues. Rabbi Yochanan wants to know what's the source. That the criteria is Kodesh HaKadoshim, or the criteria is the Big Day Lavan, the white clothing. It says, and a couple of words in between, and then it says Achas Bashana. The Gemara doesn't quote the whole pasuk. Whatever's in between is not necessary for us, but it says something Achas Bashana Yechaper, something Achas Bashana. I say Lachaper Abnei Israel, something Achas Bashana. So the word Chukah, Rashi points out, Chukah Ikuba. The word Chukah Solam. That's where we learn out that it's essential. So anybody that says anything's essential is only going to be from the word Chukah Solam. In general, by Kachim we say only if it repeats it 2 times. And here it doesn't repeat it 2 times. But the Gemara says the word chukah, that this is to be the law. So the fact that it stresses this is the law, that means that it's essential. If you didn't do it, it's markev, and even the orders also. So, but it does say in the pasuk achas b'shana, once a year. So that sounds to say that this thing that I'm telling you that's essential is only once a year. So not on Yom Kippur, of course, but even on Yom Kippur, only the things that are called once a year. And that's the machlokes. What does that mean? The Gemara Namid Beis, Rabbi Yehuda Savar. Makom Shemeskapen B'Pamachas B'Shana. He puts in the word Makom, the place, which is the kapara happens once a year. What's unique about the place? Only the Kodesh HaKadoshim. There are things that he does in the white clothing, but it's outside, and the outside in the Heichal or on the Azara and the courtyard is used the whole year. The only place which is used once a year is only the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So Rabbi Yehuda says when the pasuk says that the things that are ma'akev is achas b'shana, it means the makom, the place which is used once a year. So therefore, only the things that happen in the Kodesh HaKadoshim are essential. Not makom but dvarim. Anything Anything which is a once a year avoda, which would be the things that are done in the big day love, that's unique. It doesn't say makom. So anything which is a once a year avoda, the Yom Kippur avoda, and the big day love, and that's the thing which is ma'akev, even if it's not in the Kodesh HaKodashim, even though it's not in the Holy of Holies. That's the machlokes. That's how Yochanan suggested that according to Yehuda, the word achas b'shan is referring to the makom, and according to Rabbi Nechemia, not after the makom. But then what doesn't like this? Third line. Other Rabbi Yehuda, makom ksiv. It doesn't say the word makom. How does he stick it in? It doesn't say makom. It says achas b'shana. So Rabbi Nechemia is right. That anything which is a once a year avoda should be makiv, even if it's not done in the Kodesh HaKodashim. It doesn't say makom. So the Gemara revises the pshat a little bit. Elahain the time of Rabbi Yehuda, ksiv zos, ksiv achas. There are two miutim, two exclusions. Means the word masculine, the word chukah is the pasuk where you learn out that things are essential, and the order is also essential. But then the pasuk says achas b'shan, only one time. The one-time things is coming to be mamai. Not everything is makeh. And there's also another pasuk that says voice zos lachem l'chukas olam. This also is coming to be mamai, that not everything is essential. So there are two miutim. So because of the two miutim, we have to find two things that are not makeh. If you would say just chukas olam, everything's makeh, everything would be essential. Whatever you missed up, the order also, everything is essential. But since the pasuk says two miutim, two exclusions, you have to minimize it, mitigate it. So
same law we did earlier. We had two laws that were. We had two examples. Shtei ketuvim.
No,
That's not this.
not this. No.
It's not
This is miutim. Chadamute big day lavani b'chutz, v'chadamute big day zav. So the order of the Gemara is better to change it around. The Hegioni order would say chadamute big day zav, v'chadamute big day lavani b'chutz. These words they do change around. The two kesofim brings down a gersa which changes around these 2 points, and he says it's very beautiful change. And chadamute big day zav. That we go as first chadamute big day zav and chadamute big day lavani b'chutz. Means that when the pasuk says that not everything is essential, so the first thing that you're going to exclude is going to be things that are done in the golden clothing. That's not Yom Kippur avodah. Even if it's a mitzvah which is done, there are some things done in the big days of which is for Yom Kippur, like the Elov Elah but it's the most removed from being unique. It's done in the regular big begadim of the Kohen Gadol, the big days of. So the first thing that you exclude is things done in the golden clothing. Everybody agrees to that. But the Rebbe says there's another pasuk. It says, and the real Rabbi Rav Nechemia holds. Rav Nechemia holds if it's done in the golden clothing, then it's not makeh. But if it's done in the white clothing, it is makeh. But the Rebbe says there's another pasuk. It says also zos. So that's going to come to be mamait, even if it's done in the white clothing, but it's done out of the Kodesh HaKodashim. Also, it's not makeh.
It's the makom issue.
Right, but not the word makom. It doesn't say the word makom, but it says tumiyutim, because of those tumiyutim, when we exclude not only things that are done in the golden clothing, even those things that are done in the white clothing, but it's not done in the Kodesh HaKodashim, also it's not makeh. That's the source of Rabbi Yehuda. What is Rabbi Nechemia going to do? He has to also say that is extra meter. Rabbi Nechemia, what is Rabbi Nechemia going to do with these two psukim? Chadamut and big day zav. Yeah, that goes without saying. That the big day zav he holds is also not ma'akev. The chadamut shirayim, the lo ma'akvi. There's one thing that Rabbi Nechemia agrees, even though it's done in the white clothing, it's not ma'akev. And that is if he didn't pour the leftover blood onto the yisod. We said after he does everything, he does matanos in the Kodesh HaKodashim, then he does it in the heichal, then he does it on the mizbeach ha'pnimi, and then the leftover blood he pours out on the yisod. That Rabbi Nechemia agrees, even though he's wearing the white clothing, that's not ma'akev. And the Gemara seems to say that the order and being ma'akev all together might go together. We had a Gemara in the Flamates over there, the Mem. The Gemara seems to put together at least a suffix in the Gemara. If the order is not ma'akev, maybe the whole thing's not ma'akev either. But here, Rabbi Nechemia is saying that I do agree. There's one more thing. Because once the Gemara brought in extra meat, so Rabbi Nechemia also has to give in something. So he says, I give in that the Shiraim is not ma'akev. Even though it's done in the big day Lavan, Shiraim is not ma'akev. What we have so far, according to Rabbi Yehuda, everything done in the Kodesh HaKodashim is ma'akev, and also even the order. According to Rabbi Nechemia, even things that are done in the white clothing outside is also ma'akev. Well, one exception, that Shvich HaShiraim, to pour out the leftover blood on the Yisod, Rabbi Nechemia agrees is not ma'akev. But Rabbi Yehuda says, I can't agree to that. Rabbi Yehuda, makvi, v'lo makvi. He doesn't see the difference. Means, is the Shvich HaShiraim pouring out the leftover blood, is it any less significant than any other avodah? So Nechemia seems to say yes, that it's less significant. Then if something's going to go, that could go and everything else didn't go because it's less significant. And Rabbi Yehuda holds it isn't any less significant. And if there's no reason to distinguish between any other avodah, putting the blood in the Kodesh HaKodashim or in the Heichal or on the Mizbeach, or then putting it on the Shvich HaShiraim, no difference. They're all the same. And therefore, if you're going to say that is not ma'akev, so then nothing is ma'akev. If you say that everything is ma'akev, that's also ma'akev. So he doesn't see this difference. And the Gemara is now going to go into the subject about Shvich HaShiraim, pouring out leftover blood is it less significant than anything else? So whoever says Ezel Makom every day, so it says Lo Nasan Lo Ikev. It says a few times, Shiroi Adam Yeshav Echad Yisod, whatever, my Rabbi, Jomi, Lo Nasan Lo Ikev. But that's not so simple. I'm going to talk about it now. Is it Ma'akev? If you didn't do the Shvicha Shirayim, it could be even the whole year. The Gemara seems to be talking about the whole year also. Is it any less than the rest of the Matanos? So this is the Machlokas now. From Nehemiah, Rabbi Yehuda, I'm sorry, Rabbi Yehuda said, Makvi, Makvi, Lo Makvi, Lo Makvi.
What does that mean?
If the things that are done outside of the Kodesh HaKadosh Ma'akev, this also should be Ma'akev. The Shvicha Hashem is not any less. And if this is not Ma'akev, then nothing should be Ma'akev. He doesn't see the difference between the Shivayim and anything else. The word Shivayim alone
Because
is
they
also.
say it should be machmir.
It's
just
not
like
any
everything.
different. It isn't any different. It's not any different. If you want to say that's not Ma'akev, so then nothing's Ma'akev. That's what I say. Yehuda says that only the Kodesh HaKadoshim is Ma'akev and nothing else is Ma'akev.
Ah.
But you want to say that other things are Ma'akev. Just Shivayim is not Ma'akev. That's what Yehuda doesn't see. He doesn't see the Shivayim being any less significant than anything else. The Tanya. Kidatanya. V'chilam v'chapres HaKodesh. The Gemara is going to bring the issue over here that Rabbi Yehuda holds that the Shivayim, it's going to take a little bit of time, but the Gemara is going to bring down at least one opinion that according to Rabbi Yehuda, that if you didn't put the Shivayim, if you didn't pour the Shivayim, leftover blood onto the Yisod, it is Ma'akev. It could be even the whole year round. Kidatanya. The pasuk is talking about Yom Kippur. V'chilam v'chapres HaKodesh. He finishes to do the kapara on the Kodesh. That's the pasuk in Parashas Zachor. Kidatanya. The first word on the line is Ma'akvi. Kidatanya.
Okay.
V'chilam v'chapres HaKodesh. Im kiper kila, im lo kiper lo kila. Divrei Rabbi Kiva, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Mepnei ma lo nomar, im kila kiper, im lo kila lo kiper. Shem chizer achas, menamatonas lo sav lo klum. All this is the brisa. Kidatanya until here, right? And this was the till. I'm sorry, lo klum. Okay. My highline doesn't work so much, but till lo klum is then the brisa. And what does it say? Machlokes Rabbi Kiva. It seems to be machlokes Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Kiva said that you dash in the pasuk. If he atoned, he finished. If he didn't atone, he didn't finish. Rabbi Yehuda said the opposite. If he finished, he atoned. If he didn't finish, he didn't atone. And that means if you lacked, if you missed one of the matanos of the blood, you didn't do anything. What does that mean? So it seems like you have to do everything. No matter how you read the pasuk, it says like you have to do everything. If you finished, you atoned. If you atoned, you finished. It seems to be all the same. It seems to say that everything is ma'akev. Everything is essential. If you did everything, then it's good. If you didn't do everything, is not good. But they're arguing something about the words. Do you read the words that if he finished, he atoned? Or do you read the words if he atoned, he finished? What's that all about? So, Vamin and Rabbi, what is machlokes between Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Yehuda and the way to darshan the pasuk? Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shua Levi, it's machlokes between these two Amarim. Chad Amar Mashmos Darshan Ika Benai. One says no machlokes. It's just we had to read the pasuk, and everyone means the same thing. You have to do everything. If you don't do everything, you're not the Yotzei. But one says, there's machlokes going on. Shirayim Makvi Ikbenai. The machlokes is if the Shirayim, if they're pouring out the leftover blood onto the foundation, if that is essential or not. Now, what does that mean? That if you say, Rabbi Kiva, the way he talked, he says, if you mechaper, how does it go? In kiper kilo, the word kiper means they did it. Means you did the regular kind of azar that you sprinkle the blood on the mizbeach or whatever you're supposed to do here. Talking about the kodesh hakadoshim, the heichal, whatever you're supposed to do, that's called kapara. Then you finish. And if you didn't, then you didn't finish. But he's not going to include that you have to do the Shivayim also, because that's not called Kippur. The Kippur is going to be on the Kodesh HaKadoshim, on the Heichal, on the Mizbeach. But to put the Shvicha Shivayim, that's not called Kippur. But Rabbi Yehuda says, read the passage the other way. Im Kilo Kippur. If you finish everything means you have to do everything.
Everything's connected.
Even the Shvicha Shivayim. And that's what he says. That Shivayim Makvi Kibbenai, that according to Rabbi Yehuda, if you didn't do the Shivayim, it's Makvi. It could be yours even the whole year also, even though we say in the Mishnah over there, in Lo Nasan Lo Ikei, but Rabbi Yehuda would say in Lo Nasan Ikei, that the Shivayim is also essential. So Rabbi Yehuda doesn't see a difference between the other Matanos and the Shivayim, and therefore he says, if you hold that things done out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim also Makvi, there's no reason to say that Shivayim is different. So he can't agree to Rabbi Nechemia, and he says that anything out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim is not Makvi. Rabbi Nechemia does see that something is less significant about the Shivayim, and therefore he can say,
on that Nakuda.
right, and therefore he says that everything else is Ma'akev, even if it's out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, as long as it's done in the white clothing. One thing I give in and Shiraim is less, and over there, that's the pasuk. You have to have two psukim, Zos and Achas. That comes to tell you that even the Shiraim is not makir, even though it's under white clothing, it's not makir.
Why is Rabbi Yehuda involved with this argument? Because he says the only things that are makir are things not in Kodesh Kedushim. So what's
He's coming
outside?
to explain why he argues on Nechemia.
Oh, wait,
Nechemia
okay.
says,
No, he's got a fault in the Rabbi Nechemia's way. of thinking.
yeah, because it says two psukim. Rabbi Yehuda says one pasuk is coming to say the golden clothing is not makir. One pasuk is coming to say the white clothing outside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Rabbi Nechemia says, don't darshan so much. Just take away the Shiraim. So Rabbi Yehuda says, I can't just take away nothing less than Shiraim than anything else. If you're saying Shiraim is not makir, anything else also is not makir that's out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. He sees the difference between the Kodesh HaKadoshim and that he does see, but he doesn't see a difference between everything else and the Shiraim. Rabbi Nechemia says Shiraim is less significant, and therefore that's the one exception. Nothing else is an exception. The Gemara stands off. Rabbi Yochanan, Tana Rabbi Nechemia, Kedivya Omer Shiraim Akvi. Kasha. And the end of today's Gemara. We'll stop over here. So
Please,
the Gemara is a
last
kasha.
one.
The Gemara is a kasha. Rabbi Yochanan seems to contradict himself.
So what you're reading, Umi Amar.
Till the word kasha is where I got up to today, and we'll get there. Let's read it in a second. The Gemara asks the contradiction in Rabbi Yochanan. All this, the Gemara attributes to Rabbi Yochanan, who started off in the bottom of the previous page. Rabbi Yochanan, Shnei Mikra Echad Darshan. He's the one who's talking over here, the whole drasha. So it comes out that Rabbi Yochanan said that the machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nechemia is about the Shiraim. That according to Rabbi Nechemia, Shiraim is not significant, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, it is. And that's the source of the machlokas when you have Achas and Zos, how much are you going to exclude? Rabbi Yehuda excludes everything out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and Rabbi Nechemia excludes only the Shiraim. But the Gemara has a contradiction in Rabbi Yochanan because Rabbi Yochanan himself quoted Rabbi Nechemia saying that Shiraim is makir. In Zvachim, Rabbi Yochanan said that Rabbi Nechemia holds like the opinion that says that Shiraim is makir. So that's a contradiction now. If your Shiraim is makir, that means it's as significant as anything else. So that the Gemara leaves as a kasha, and we start the sugya over here. So what do we get? Just to sum up today's sugya, first the Gemara spoke about yesterday's sugya. We spoke about there's nothing that was done. The mitzvah was done, and it's now nothing to do with that anymore. And there still is mila, and that's the klal. And we read to the klal. There are two exceptions, maybe even three. One is Shumas Hadeshin, that even though the mitzvah was done, still you're not allowed to be hanaf from it. It's also mila. Egel arufa, even though the mitzvah was done, you're not allowed to benefit from it. Big tikkun is a machlokus. Some say big tikkun also that you're not allowed to use it anymore, but there still is mila. Some say that you are allowed to use it. So that's machlokus, that the point edge is allowed to use it or not. But everybody holds that you don't learn now to other things, and the Gemara says even if you hold Shnei Ksubim, Ba'Makech and Melamdin, but here there's a miyut, there's a mo, ha'arufa, the vav, the hey. So therefore, the klal, as a rule, we say that Ein Chadav Shanasis Misfaso or Molinbo. After that, the Gemara says that there are three psukim, back to the sugya before, that there are three psukim to say that blood is not so usher, and everybody agrees that one pasuk is going to tell you there's no meila on the blood even before the kapara. And then there's another two psukim want to say that there's no chiyuv of nosar, there's no chiyuv of tumah. If someone ate the blood when he was tamei, blood of a carbon is not chayv koros for that. And everyone also agrees that pigul, there's no pigul on the blood, but they don't need a pasuk for that because in the regular klalim of pigul, it doesn't fit to the regular description of what pigul is. It has to be that as a matir, blood doesn't have a matir, it itself was a matir. So that's
What does a matir mean?
Matir means something which makes it mutter. And let's say
so there's no-
they eat, there's nothing, you don't need any. Nothing has to be done for the blood in order to permit the blood to go into the mizbeach. Let's say eating the meat, putting the meat on the mizbeach, you have to first do the zrikas adam first. You're not allowed to eat the meat before you do zrikas adam. You're not allowed to put the blood, the meat on the mizbeach before you do zrikas adam. So the meat has a matir, but the blood doesn't have a matir. So according to the rules of pigul, it's not pigul. So everybody agrees that on the blood there's no sar, there's no pigul, there's no tamei, and there's also no meila either. The Mishnah continued about the order. The order is makir. And the Mishnah talks about an example of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. If the blood of the goat was done before the blood of the bull, so it's makir, you have to do the blood of the goat again. We can skip the other part of the Mishnah, which we said is not relevant right now. It's a new Mishnah that speaks about if the blood spilled out in the middle, if you have to go back to the beginning of the series or just continue where you left off, we'll continue when we get up to that Mishnah. But now the Gemara says, as far as the order, so this is machlokas. Even though our Mishnah says a blanket statement that the order is makir, it's not so simple. According to Rabbi Yehuda, only what's done in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. According to Nechemia, even anything is with the white clothing, even out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, with the exception of the Shirayim. That the Shvicha Shirayim, even Rabbi Nechemia is going to have to hold that it is not makir. And the Gemara brings that there's a pasuk says l'chukas olam. That's where you learn out that it's makir. But there's two miyutim. One is the word achas b'shana. Also it says zos. Here's two pasuk. Maybe it says zos. Looking, there's the zos, and also it says achas.
What
so
does that mean?
After this is makir, something else is not makir. So there are two miyutim, and therefore, what do you do with the two miyutim? Rabbi Yehuda says one miyut is to tell you the golden clothing, and not only that, even the white clothing, if it's not in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, was also not makir. And Rabbi Nechemia says no, the gold clothing is not makir, and Shiraim is not Ma'akev. And that's less than everything else. It's less significant than any other avoda, because in general, it seems only around the that it's not Ma'akev, in Lo Nasan Lo Ikev. And that's the reason to say that it's less significant than even if the white clothing is Ma'akev, but Shiraim is not Ma'akev. That's the end of the sugya. And I just wanted to I said yesterday that in yesterday's halachas about how you do the matanos on the mizbeach pnimi. Do you walk around? Do you go towards the right? Do you start from the southeast or from the northeast? So I said I'll come back with halacha. So I just looked at the Chafetz Chaim and everything. It's big machlokas. Everything's a machlokas. So I don't have any a specific definite thing to say, but these issues are machlokas. Also we said that you come out from the southern side. It's hooked up on the south. That we do paskin like. But that's not so simple how you learn the Gemara. We learn the Gemara one way, according to the way we learn the Gemara. So then you will come out to the southern side and start in the southeast corner, and then go around to the left and come out on the northeast corner. But he says
It was
all these
anti-clockwise.
issues, all these issues. That's clockwise. That's clockwise.
Going
That's
left.
left. Going left is clockwise. And going right is counterclockwise.
Oh, as you come to it, you go left, that's clockwise, right.
So okay, but that's
No, you're going,
in general, I couldn't get that straight halacha to say because it seems to be machlokas rishonim on all these issues. So I'm just leaving it open, and I in Likutei halachas. Okay, that's Hashem.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll see you soon.
yeah.